Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am pleased to present two people who are longtime best friends, professional colleagues, and who both played a key role in helping Jimmy Buffett build his musical empire. I promise you will leave here today smarter and more enlightened than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, I want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I'm a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So, by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. And in this series, my goal is to help you make more connections. I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity, specifically by engaging with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And also ask questions of our speakers. Also, this is very important. Please make sure your chat setting is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, I could not continue to do this for free. Special thanks to MedJet, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Tennessee Brew Works, and my favorite industry podcast, Unlimited Supply. So let's get down to business. Today, I want to welcome Coleman Sisson. He is the founder and CEO of Bubble Up, the premier web development and marketing agency in the music industry, with clients including Luke Bryan, Khruangbin, Aerosmith, Kiss, Kenny Chesney, and of course, Jimmy Buffett. Under his leadership, Bubble Up has been named to the Inc. 5000, ranked #1 digital agency in Houston by Clutch, and earned 2 Webby Awards. Coleman also serves as longtime technology consultant to Jimmy Buffett, where he created and manages Radio Margaritaville, Margaritaville TV, and related digital projects. Earlier in his career, he led growth as president of Liberate Technologies, president and COO of CyberSafe, and senior roles at Vanstar, PowerSoft, and Compaq Computer. He holds a BSBA from the University of Arkansas and completed the Cable Executive Management program at Harvard Business School. Welcome, Coleman. It is such an honor to finally have you on the program.
It's nice being ahead.
And joining him is none other than Mike Utley. Mike is a multi-talented musician, producer, and composer who spent 5 decades in the music industry, working with the likes of Jerry Jeff Walker, Sam and Dave, Roy Orbison, Aretha Franklin, Rita Coolidge, Duane Allman, Petula Clark, Jackson Browne, and Chris Christopherson. He's most well known for his decades of working closely with Jimmy Buffett. This chapter of his career started as a keyboardist on Buffett's album, a white sport coat and pink crustacean. He went on to become Buffett's music arranger, and their collaboration has continued and grown ever since. Over the course of that partnership, he's produced 20 albums for Buffett, including the #1 album, License to Chill. He began touring as a choral reefer in 1981 and as the band's musical director since 1993. He also orchestrated the Broadway musical Escape to Margaritaville. It is my honor and privilege to present these two rock stars to you today. Take it away, gentlemen.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
Hey,
Hey, hey,
Mike,
Coleman. I
Mike,
did,
did you know he had sponsors?
no, I did not. How does this technology work? Tell me.
You need
You
to
know
get a
all
little
about
closer
this.
to the camera. Get a little closer to the camera.
Coleman, it's so wonderful to be here and to be talking to you. We go way back.
We do, and
Yeah.
likewise, I'm so glad that we got to do this when Tom called and said, "Hey, I should pick someone to talk to." You're easy to be the first on my list.
Well, I tell you, we have a couple of things that are in common. As you know, as you heard from Tom, Coleman is a graduate of the University of Arkansas. Myself, I'm also a graduate of the University of Arkansas several years prior, but So we know that that campus pretty well, and all its sports teams. That's what we usually talk about when we the first when we catch up with each other is about
Mm.
depending if it's baseball season or basketball or football or whatever.
Yep.
But and then the other thing we have in common is Jimmy Buffett,
Right.
which I was with him, about 50 years. And Coleman, I don't know how many. Tell me how you met Jimmy.
I was, I was always a fan. I mean, I've been a fan since '76, and I picked up a guitar, listening to his stuff, and tried to be him. But I met him. It was 1991, I think 90 or 91, and I was working at a company called Compact Computer, and I was in charge of the customer support center. And he had called in, or he had actually a dealer called in. Someone brought me a note and said Jimmy Buffett called. They all knew I was a fan, so I thought they were kidding with me. But I called the number, and it was a dealer in Miami had his computer, and he said uh, Jimmy's hard drive has crashed, and he's upset. And I said, well, if you send it to me and he calls me, I'll fix it. And so I got the computer the next day. It was a portable. They didn't have laptops then. And I took it apart, and back then I was able to work on stuff like that, and I got the drive working. And then he called me that Friday morning. He called me and he said, listen, man, I've been working on a book for 2 years. I don't have a backup. I don't have a printed copy. I've got nothing. Can you get it back? And I got it all back. And so he that started him calling me every week. How do I do this? How do I do that? And you know him, and so I milked that cow for about 32 years or so, something like that.
32 years. Nice. No, I know. Jimmy was a technology geek.
Oh man.
Problem with Jimmy, though, he didn't really know he would get lost, at the least. So, did you ever get any late night calls or early morning calls, let's say,
Oh,
when I can't figure it out. What folder did I put in? What did I do?
oh, listen. Well, I mean, that's why we hired Rodney because
Yeah,
I'd go out on he'd ask me to go out on the tour with him, and that's when I got to meet all you guys in person.
right,
And
exactly.
yeah, he had a real knack for um, making stuff, messing stuff up. And I'll give you a great example. He, I haven't told this story many times. He, um, he was writing the musical "Don't Stop the Carnival," and he was traveling doing this, and so he had an Ibanez keyboard and he had an IBM ThinkPad and he had all these PCMCIA cards, and we had Cakewalk, and he was doing MIDI and writing all this music and stuff. And it just, I think it was mid '90s or something. You just couldn't do that stuff back then very easily, and so it would break all the time. And so he was at a Jazz Fest in New Orleans, and he told me to come see him and work on this thing. So I went to New Orleans, and I got on the bus, and I got all this shit working. I got the speakers and the keyboard and all that working. I showed it to him, and I flew back home to Houston. And right when I walked in the door, the phone rang, and um, he said, "This thing's not working again." I'm like, "What'd you do? Why could it not work?" He goes, "I don't know, but you got to make this stuff work. I got work to do. And I said, "What'd you change?" He goes, "Nothing." I said, "Well, tell you what, go to your computer and get to a DOS prompt." And he said, "Okay, I'm on a DOS prompt." I said, "Type damn it." He says, "Damn it, how do I spell it?" I said, DAMMIT. He said, "All right." I said, "Hit enter." He goes, "Okay." And I said, "Reboot." And he rebooted, and he could hear the speakers pop on. He goes, "What'd you do?" I said, "I wrote a program to put it back the way it was when I left."
That's nice.
And he
Well,
said,
that
"You
is
called me, damn it, bye."
that was the only time that particular thing worked. I know he would get, but anyway, that
Anyway, no, it was that, so I got to go out on the road with you guys because of that story.
right. Yeah. I'm trying to think the first time we met. I mean, I know it was in the 90s, but um,
I think there was two events, but I think it was the first time we met. I was on the bus coming from the venue after the show to the hotel, and you were sitting there, and I got to talk to you a little bit. But then a few weeks later, we were going from Chicago, from the hotel in Chicago, I think, to the venue, and it was a couple hour drive. And he had a printer and a scanner and fax machine he was wanting me to set up. And you and I sat and talked.
Right. That we were going out to Pine Knob. Yeah.
And since you were from Arkansas,
Yeah.
we had a lot in common. So, and
We
you're
did.
easy to talk to.
Well,
So,
let's talk a little bit about that. So you're from Des Arc, and the
yes,
White
sir.
River runs through Des Arc. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Yeah. And I
Crystal.
remember you telling me it was nice and blue. It was clear. And I said, Coleman, I used to go fishing in Duval's Bluff. How far is Duval's Bluff from Des Arc?
About 15 miles.
Okay.
Same river.
Same river. It can't turn brown in 15 miles. Now I know you're closer to the Ozarks, but
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, that yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, you're right. It was a brown river. I don't even know why I call it the White River, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I know. But anyway,
Anytime I saw water, I think we're standing by a river in New Hampshire or something, and I said, that reminds me of home. And you're like, Coleman.
well, no, I guess it could have been. I remember the first time I went up to Hannibal, Missouri, uh, and I said, "Gosh, this is blue water. This is on the Mississippi. This
Hmm.
is not mud like
Yeah.
it was where I grew up in Blytheville, Arkansas.
Well, and the White River, what I grew on further north, is beautiful.
It's
It really is
beautiful.
clear
Yeah.
water.
No, I know up in Mountain View. I mean Mountain Home and Mountain View. That area. Uh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and that you used to go fishing up there.
Well, and you're from Blytheville, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is almost Missouri, Tennessee kind of
Well, it
thing.
is. It's 6 miles from Missouri, 11 miles from Tennessee. So it's right there in the corner.
And it's a lot prettier than Des Arc.
No, no, Des Arc's
No?
pretty than Blytheville. Yeah, I love Blytheville. I love growing up there. It was beautiful, but it was farmland. It was the delta part of the western side of the Mississippi. Then it becomes on down into Mississippi, the Mississippi River. On down to Mississippi, it goes into the east side. Around
So
Florida.
what got you from Blytheville to Arkansas, University of Arkansas?
Well, at that time, this is 1965. My parents didn't go to the University of Arkansas. My sister went there, so I'd been up visiting um, and seeing her, and I love the campus. It's beautiful up there in the Ozarks,
Yeah.
and at that time, you just applied to one school. For me, it was, and I applied and I got in. So I think they had to let me in. I don't know, but it's funny. I know Des Arcs near where Charlie Rich is from, and my sister took me to the and her friend took me to the Capasig house one night, and Charlie was in Capasig, and he was playing there. It's just so ironic that this is all before I ever thought I was going to be a musician. I thought I was going to be a doctor, and uh, and it was I know exactly who was playing drums with him because I ended up getting to work with the guy, Sammy Creason,
Hmm.
uh, and he was from Jonesboro. And I remember the way he played. And then when I actually got to do a session with him, I said, "You're the guy that was playing drum with Charlie." And it was it's just kismet that all these things happen. You meet people and you said, "I know, I've seen you play. I've seen you on stage before." Because, it's just, it was great. Anyway, well, back
Well,
to you.
and one of my best friend is on this. I saw him. He was one of the first people on. His name is Rich Cosgrove, and I think he is Charlie Rich's nephew.
Uh-huh.
I think his mother is Charlie Rich's sister. So
Oh, okay. All right.
everybody in Arkansas is
Oh,
related.
well, just one other note, a side note. First gig I ever had once I left the university, to be a professional musician, whatever that is. Uh, anyway, Sammy and his wife Claudia said, she worked for a booking agency. I got this gig. Charlie Rich is playing the Watermelon Festival in Cape Cod, Missouri. I said, "Oh, Charlie plays the piano." He says, "You know me playing the piano. You be playing bass." I said, "Bass?" I said, "I don't know how to play bass." He says, "Yes, you do."
And
So
did you?
I go to Cape Girardeau and I borrowed the bass, or Sammy and Claudia got me a bass, and I sat in with them, and boy, uh,
Aren't you glad you went back to piano?
oh yeah, oh yeah, but
Wow. What? So I got one more question about all that, and
yeah,
because you graduated from Arkansas and you were
hmm
going to go to med school and
yeah.
would have made it in, but then you decided to go be a musician. What did your mother say?
Well, she was fine with it. My dad was the doctor, and he was the one I had to really
Oh.
convince. I remember that conversation. I was sitting at the piano while I was talking to him. I needed a security blanket. And I said, this is right before they were coming back up, and you finish finals and there's a couple of weeks before graduation. At least it was back then. And we were about to go back up to Fayetteville for the graduation. And I said, Dad, I got to tell you something. I've I think I've decided to try a hand at, being a sideman, session player or whatever, musician. And he said, I always knew you were going to do that. You know,
Oh,
even though I'd studied, I was in pre-med, never studied music besides just private lessons. And he understood. So he
well, and
said,
then I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, he said, I always knew after you came back from football practice, the first thing you did, you didn't lay down or sit down. You came to the piano and started playing. And that
Wow,
was true. So yeah.
wow. And then your son Mick followed right in there, and I'm sure it
Yeah.
was easier for him. Oh,
Oh yeah.
was and
Well, yeah,
he's
none of my parents played. My mother played a little piano, but yeah, they
none of
didn't.
them played music.
No, well, that I know of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my mother sure tried. She could play from sheet music, but she wasn't, okay, but not great.
Yeah. But anyway,
Oh,
so you met Jimmy. You're
I did.
working at computer companies all over you started in Houston, then you moved to Seattle at some point.
Yeah, I moved to Houston. I got out of school in '79. I moved to Houston and was a computer programmer at a gas pipeline company.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then I was still there when I met Jimmy, and then I moved off to Boston for a while. Worked for a technology company there, and moved back to Houston, then moved to Seattle, um, and then to San Francisco, and then back to Houston, where I am now.
Well,
So
that's great. But then when did this idea of being the entrepreneur that you are, uh,
I hate
that
that word.
starting Bubble Up, and how did that all come about? Your company.
um, a big part of it was my dad. I grew up in a family-owned business, and I had, as a programmer, I worked in big companies, and um, in fact, Compaq, when I got to hang around with you guys, once Jimmy connected with Jimmy, I'd go out on the tour for a few days, and gave me a real taste of the music business. And I was a hack musician, and I always thought I'd be good enough to make it. And I'll never forget, we were in Detroit backstage, and there was a baby grand piano, and it was covered. And Mary Harris and Fingers Taylor sat down on the bench together, pulled the cover off that baby grand piano, and just started beating the blues out of that piano. And I stood there and thought, I'm never going to be this good. So, so I better stick with the computer shit. um, and I did. And so, um, I think, then I'm hanging out with you guys and I'm seeing the music business and, from the Jimmy's perspective. And, right, I had done Radio Margaritaville with him and all that stuff. And so around 2003 or so, iTunes came out, and I'd always wanted my own business like my dad.
Yeah.
And I saw that iTunes had come out, and iTunes, I thought, what, there's probably going to be a way that artists will want to sell people downloads from their website. And that's where Bubble Up first came from. I actually asked Howard Kaufman what I should do to understand the music business, and he said, read Don Passman's book, All You Need to Know About the Music
Mhm.
Business. So I
Right.
read that book, and since I thought I was going to sell 99-cent downloads, I drew a chart that said 99 cent, and then it went up to Best Buy and then Sony and then the
Right.
manager. And I figured out that when I started off $1 for that one song, ended up the artist might have got a nickel out of it.
Hmm.
And I was describing that to someone, and I said, I want more money to bubble up to the artist. That's where the name of the company came from.
Wow.
And back then the domain was available, so that's why it's called Bubble Up. And that wasn't a really great idea because you can't make money a nickel at a time. So
Well,
we pivoted, and Jimmy told me, actually, where it kicked off was Jimmy told me to go check out the Music Mafia. He said that's the hottest thing in Nashville right now.
mhm.
And so I went and found those guys, and they were our first music customer.
Oh, they were.
Yeah.
Well, did you have a partner or anything when you first started?
Well, yeah, I'd have somebody knew what the hell they were doing. Yeah, Lee Totten.
Lee, yeah, oh Lee. So how did you? I need to ask you how you met Lee.
Well, I was in Chicago, and I was getting ready to leave the hotel, go to the airport, and I made a pit stop at Ralph McDonald's room for nefarious reasons.
I'm glad you brought Ralph's name up. That's great. Yeah.
And Ralph showed me. He said I had just started Bubble Up, and he said, "Man, you got to see this website I got." And I said, "Let me see it, Ralph." And he pulled up his laptop, and I said, "Damn, that looks great. Where'd you get that?" And he goes, "Well, I got this cat up near me, and he did it for free, and he's really talented." And I said, "I need to meet that guy." And
Okay.
and Ralph connected Lee and I.
Well, that's the first time I met Lee too. Was through. I mean, he was showing the website to everybody,
Oh, he was.
but you could do something with that website. We were just lowly musicians. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so Lee had me cropping photos and stuff like that until we figured I wasn't very good at that either. So we hired somebody to do that.
Well, you've had much success with this company.
Yeah, just making sure get me out of the jobs I'm not good at.
Yeah. Now I understand with going back to Jimmy as far as because you ran a lot of his tech ventures, and one was Radio Margaritaville.
Hmm.
I'd always thought he had, uh, somehow started it down in Key West or something, but the way it happened, you go ahead and tell the story of how Margaritaville Radio began.
That was in 1998 and 97, 98. And I was living in Seattle, and he called me and he said, "Hey man, I need you to go down to Key West and check out this AM radio station I'm wanting to buy." And I said, "What do you want to do with that?" And he goes, "Well, I want to broadcast Cuban baseball games and my music." And I really didn't want to fly from Seattle to Key West, but I told him, I said, "Dude, I don't know shit about radio." And he goes, "Yeah, but they got a lot of computers and you know that." And there's a company in Seattle right now called Progressive Networks, and I think they're going to start doing streaming. And I said, you could play, play your music, be worldwide. You can cuss, do whatever you want to do, and it won't be controlled by the FCC. And he said, "Well, go do that." And so that's what we did. Instead of the AM radio station, um, I started putting together the technology to do it. I had an extra laptop. He told me to meet a guy named Steve Huntington down in, at that time, Steve was near Tampa, I think.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
he was that or Orlando, one of the two. Anyway, so Steve was a jazz DJ in Florida, and we talked, met at a concert. He made 5 CDs that sounded like programs. I put them on the laptop, and we started streaming Radio Margaritaville then. And the really cool breakthrough was a few months later. We were at Nissan Pavilion in the DC area. I think it's Manassas.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
think that's where that was. And we had Steve and I were playing around with this thing called a Comrex Vector. It was a little small box that they used it for high school football games where they could plug into a telephone and broadcast what was going on with the football game.
Right.
But anyway, we're sitting back there messing with it, and Jimmy comes by and he goes, "What's that thing?" And we told him, and I said, "Check this out." So we interviewed him for a little bit, and then the delay was so long that he could stop the interview and then listen to what he said. And he said, "Can you hook that to the sound system?" And I said, "Well, if I can find a long enough cable, sure." He said, "Well, hook it to it and broadcast the show live." And so I did, and he took a break, and during the intermission, he came back and said, "How'd that go?" I said, "Went great, worked perfectly." He said, "We'll just stream the rest of the show." And then he got up on stage and said, "We're streaming live on Radio Margaritaville all over the world right now, and we're gonna do every show from here on out." And I thought, "Oh shit! I borrowed this thing, man. I don't even." And it was $3,500 each. You needed two, and I had no budget.
No,
But
no, of course not. Was it a borrowed piece of gear? Were you just checking?
yeah,
Yeah, okay. All
yeah.
right. Yeah.
And you know what was crazy though? We streamed every show live from then on.
Mhm.
Every single show live, and for free.
Yeah.
And ticket sales went up.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yep, it helped
Then
ticket sales.
then Howard, Jimmy's manager, started calling you more.
Yeah, but he didn't like it. Although, one thing that did end up, and I think you produced some of these. So then the next thing we see is people are recording the shows and selling CDs on eBay, and it was really bad. It was like 28 kb
Yeah.
transmission speed. It was mono. It was terrible sound. And I told Jimmy, I said, "You know what? We could probably get a Pro Tools rack back here and record these really good quality and sell them." And I think he did 5 of them. And Howard did like me then because they sold the
Right.
heck out of those.
Yeah, we did. The first one, I think, was Hawaii. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, we did all the Pacific Northwest,
Yep.
and we did a couple of three or four, maybe two or three from Hawaii.
Cincinnati, Hawaii. Um, I want to say Portland. I
Yeah,
think.
Portland and Seattle.
Yeah, a few. And then of course that made it where it was easy to do Fenway Park and all that.
Right, right.
But that was the thing, Mike, is he was fearless.
Oh, I know.
You know,
He
he
was he Jimmy idea guy. He
yeah.
said, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it." And I'm just this is just me talking about Jimmy just for a second. He would 99% of his ideas didn't work, but that 1%, whoa, he they a home run.
Oh, dude, and listen, and the thing was so cool about it was if it didn't work, he's like, "Okay, we'll go do the next thing," and he just
Yeah,
let it go. He was just let it go.
he didn't care it didn't work. I mean, he
No,
wanted it to work, but if it didn't, it just well
well,
how did Radio Margaritaville end up in at Sirius? What how did that happen?
well, it was costing Jimmy money, and it wasn't making
Okay.
any money. And John Coleman is the reason he went to Sirius. It was Sirius then; it wasn't Sirius XM. And because we were doing the live broadcast, that was really interesting to them. And the um, the um, the live broadcast and the dedicated fan base, they were like, "All right, we'll go in." And we were the first artist specific station on Sirius XM. And no, that was John Colan.
Who's Jimmy's partner in the
Yeah, and then Margaritaville and all that stuff. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Well, that's great.
So, was speaking of Jimmy, how was he? When I met him, if it was 91, 40, he had to be 45, I guess, probably about then. 46 was
Uh,
his birthday. How was he different or the same when he was younger than he was as he got older?
he was he would try. He was fearless. He would try anything, and I mean that pertaining to the stage show. He would. Uh, oh, let's have. I remember there was one time. Used to do skits.
Plastic butt and stuff.
Yeah, well, that was in the big show. We used to do the King Kong Trio, and like we had been in New Orleans, and K Paul's had just opened, and they used to give us. It was well, there was two versions at one time. The first two versions was uh, Harry Daly, Fingers, and Jimmy were the first King Kong Trio. And then Sam Clayton, who played with Little Feat, myself, and Jimmy were another one. This version was Sam and Jimmy and I. And we'd been to K. Paul's in New Orleans, and they had sent a 5-gallon jug of their Cajun martinis.
Oh boy.
So we put it. He said, "Let's put it on stage and get the everybody to come up, and and they can. We'll just talk about nothing." So we get people on stage, everybody we get shit faced drinking these martinis. But the show must go on, so we'd finish the show. But this was happening every night when we were doing it. And this was not Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday yet. When
Yeah.
that's what it became, uh, when we would do shows. That wasn't until about 99. It could be, Tuesday night was as, crazy as Saturday night. So that's why it became every night was like a Saturday night. Uh, so we were doing 5 or 6 shows and, having those skits and then that developed into the bigger show with, you know, well, all the bubble ass and what Cap Steuben and what else we have? I don't know.
I don't know. I was a shark once. I had a shirt. I had to go out on stage like
Yeah,
that. And
exactly. Exactly.
Ramos just hands me a shirt. He says, "Put this on. Get ready." So how did you meet Jimmy?
I was on the road. I was on the road with and Rita, Chris Christopherson, and Rita Coolidge, and myself, Sammy, and then we were sort of remnants of Rita's band, the Dixie Flyers, and then Chris's band, Donnie Fritz, Terry Paul, Stephen Bruton, and um, well, I think Billy Swan had left that band by then, but we get a phone call. We were in like West Texas somewhere, and Claudia, because she was an agent, so it was easy to get in touch with us. No cell phones. You know the the agencies. Her name was in a book. You had it's like a directory. You had back then. You had a book of all the people that in the music business. So if you
Yeah.
get turned in touch with somebody's attorney, you can look them up because it's the who's of the music business. So
Wow.
Don Gant, who had signed Jimmy to ABC Dunhill, uh, his secretary Charlotte calls and says, "Jimmy, we have a new artist, Jimmy Buffett, and he wants Sammy and myself to come and play on his record." So we said, "Sure. When is it?" And it was like January of 1973, and it became White Sport Coat and Pink Crustacean, that album. And it was myself and I'm not sure all played on it, but Reggie was one of the Reggie Young, who played on a lot of Jimmy's records from another Memphis guy, um, played on it, and probably I don't know if Steve Goodman, he played on some of the early stuff, and
Mhm.
Roger Martin, Jimmy's original uh, guitar player, and but anyway, that's how we got the call, and then from then Don, his Charlotte would call, Jimmy's doing this. And back then, you did 2 albums a year. That's what the contracts were. So we did that in January. So the next album we did in probably October or November the same year. And then Jimmy was doing the um, the doing some soundtracks like the Tarpon movie and
Oh, that's really good, by the way. I've
yeah,
watched
yeah,
that
he
recently.
did
That's
that.
really good.
But that's how I met Jimmy.
And did you immediately just go on tour with him and no more
I
reaffiliate?
was still on the road with Chris and Rita, and I would go on the road with Jimmy during that time because Chris was becoming a, he's
Movie
pursuing
star.
the movie star. We did the movie A Star Is Born, and that was in 1976 was a big year because we started that in early 1976 and filmed that, and then Chris had to do the promotional thing for that, and then he also got some other movie offers after that was such a big hit, and we were later in the year in November we cut changes in latitudes, changes in attitude, and Norbert Putnam became Jimmy's producer on that record, and then I kept playing with him at like March of '77. I did the Green Weenie tour. Um, it was it
Who
was
came up with these names?
well because it was we had a bus. Jimmy had he bought a bus. He bought a Silver Eagle, and the band was on the Silver Eagle. The crew was in the Green Weenie, and it's a camper, And Tom Corcoran was driving it,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so and the crew, all the crew was on that one, and it was like a 30-day tour, and there were about 28 play dates.
Oh, Lord.
It was brutal. And so I did that with them and ended up in Mobile at well, one of the stops where we had 2 days off in Mobile before Mardi Gras. We're getting ready for Mardi Gras. He said, "Let's do some R&R. We're going to the Alabama State Park. There was and everybody's going to chill out. It's everything's closed down. It's February, in that part of the South, and it's temperate, but it is cool at the
Hmm.
water. And so the first thing we do is Fingers gets somebody to come into the bar, and then he starts jamming with this. So there was no R&R. I mean, it was just full tilt boogie.
Keep on going. Yeah.
On going, and let's just roar into Mobile for the show at during Mardi Gras, and Hunter Thompson was there, and it was a crazy time. But anyway, so everybody survived that tour. But
Well, but he's still towards the, I mean, he still had the energy of the energy bunny. I mean,
oh yeah,
that was the thing, I noticed with him is, you know, he, my theory was that crowd just charges his battery up big time.
oh
And
yeah, I mean, it was amazing well, I just his last show, big show was San Diego.
Diego.
Yeah, yeah, and he was, hurting,
Hmm.
but he put on a great show, and it's just he was able to do it, and
Yeah.
he he always had the energy, no matter in the early days, no matter what kind of condition he was in, he would put on a great show. He was quite the entertainer.
Yeah. He was, when Escape from Margaritaville was going to debut in the Houston theater,
Right,
he was in Hawaii. And he called me and he goes, "Hey, won't you meet me there?" He goes, "I figured out that the winds are going to be blowing at 100 and something knots. And so I can do it in 7 hours and I'll leave Honolulu and I'll land at 6 o'clock and I'll be there ready to go at 7." And
right.
I said, "Man," I said, "do you want me to pick you up? You'll be exhausted." And he goes, "I'm not familiar with that term, Coleman."
No.
and he made it.
Oh, he would do. But anyway.
He did. So I was thinking of one time when I got to experience that energy was a show in Little Rock. I think this was in 2019, maybe, or something like that. Anyway, I was back during sound check. I was out there with Rich at the front of house mix, and I heard Jimmy ask you if you wanted to call the Hogs, and you said no. And I told Rich, I said I'll do it. And so he radios up to Jimmy and said Coleman to do it. So I got to call the Hogs in Little Rock on Jimmy's stage, and stand by you and put hog hats on both of us. But I had told you once the after that show, because that I felt that energy too. And after that show, I thought, well, I'll drive home and go see my mom. And I drove home. It was about midnight when I got there, and she was still up, and I was, still vibrating. And she said, well, what happened? And I told her that I called the Hogs on the stage. And she said, well, was it everything you expected it would be? Or was it everything you dreamed it would be? And I said, no, I dreamed that someday I'd play guitar or harmonica on that stage. And without missing a beat, she said, well, son, when you pray, be specific.
That's wonderful.
Classic Southern Belle. When you pray, be specific. Oh, well, are you going to do any more touring?
No,
Are you done?
I'm done. I'm retired. My son Mick is doing an unbelievable job filling. He came out a couple of years before I retired, before Jimmy passed, and it was so exciting being up on stage with him.
I
And
bet.
yeah, yeah,
He's
just
amazing. I saw them not a couple of weeks ago here in Houston, and like you, he's also just a wonderful human being. He's just a good man, and but he's talented, buddy.
oh, he's a real talent. Yes,
He's really, really good.
he's a lot more talented than old pops.
I don't know about that. I remember I told you I wish my kids could do what I do, like your kids do what you do. That was amazing.
But anyway, I want to. Oh, Radio Margaritaville. How did the, when once it went to, it became it was Sirius XM, is that what it?
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, they, during the live performances, they wanted interviews before the show. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, so that was a fun one. So that was part of the contract is that Jimmy would do an interview before the show.
Right,
And, for the longest time, for a few years anyway, it was my job to get a local DJ, or Savannah came and did a few, or Steve Huntington or Carson Cooper or
right,
Kirsten, I think, did some. And so my job was to coordinate who was going to do that.
right.
And one time I forgot. And Rodney called me and he said, who's gonna do Bing and Bong? Or no, who's gonna interview Jimmy? And I said, oh, shit, I forgot. I said, you either grab Utley or Mac, and you happened to walk up, and so you got picked, and that changed that program so incredibly well. It was one of those, damn it, why didn't I think about this 3 or 4 years ago? Because you and Jimmy were just natural with each other. And you suddenly came up with this term, bing and bong. I don't even know how that happened. Y'all did it immediately.
Well,
Who
I have
did
no
that?
idea. I don't, and he kept getting confused who he was.
Who was bing and who was bong?
Oh yeah, I always knew Bing. I thought Bing would be Bing Crosby. Jimmy the crooner. As nobody believes that, but he loves to croon. He did. He loved to croon. But um, yeah, Bing and
Bing and bong. And that went on for years. And it was so good. And I thought it really helped your banter on stage because you spent 30 minutes doing a comedy skit, basically.
but
And
no, we were, and it helped us. They get us out there 10 minutes before we go on stage, so we're sitting backstage, and we had to be, we were stage left because that's where we entered from. So Jimmy and I were
Mhm.
both there, and it's just sitting around twiddling our thumbs, waiting to be said, "Oh, it's time to go." We're waiting for the crowd to come in. You
Yeah.
know, all that stuff that goes on in the business part of you know don't start the show, start it now. And anyway, and so it made us, it was a natural for us to just sit there and talk about nothing.
It was hilarious. It
Sing,
was.
sing a song, do whatever we wanted to do, just make a face.
So one of the things Lee and I've talked about doing is releasing a best of Bing and Bong on Margaritaville TV website, and I think we should do that. And because you guys, Hakey set up some pretty interesting interviews. Like Huey Lewis was.
Yeah, later on, he got some good people. Yeah, I mean, we did Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
We did Coach. Let's see, who else? I'm trying to
Some of the
think.
guys that won the Stanley Cup, the
Yeah,
Cubs that won the World Series.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did a lot of really interesting people. But I think about Warren because he brought his ukulele out. To yeah. Oh, we did Frank Marshall.
Yep,
Frank,
Frank Marshall. Yep.
yeah, and
No, there was that was so much, and then it was so easy after that. Like I didn't have to go find somebody in the local town, and it was
but in the one time when he was still doing the interviews and there was nobody to interview, he said, "Go out there and I want you to interview Elo." Elo was an artist that Jimmy found.
yeah.
He was on one of his trips, and he had made a record with him. Mac had produced a record on him.
Cape Verde, I think, is where he went.
Yeah, exactly. And he was opening up. And so just talk about his career. And so I interviewed Elo, and I did it in the Bing and Bong interview.
Oh shoot!
And Jimmy comes up to me right before we go on stage. You have ruined his career. You're fired. Yeah, I probably did. I'm sorry.
Oh Lord.
But anyway,
Um, let's see. Well, I got. Um, oh, did you know you've got a Wikipedia?
what's that?
You got a Wikipedia. That's you're bona fide. You're famous, dude.
Oh,
Yeah. So, which I found. When did he start calling? What was the deal with Mr. Utley on the record?
volcano. Oh,
Volcano.
all right. We were down. Let's see. Keith was there. Keith Sykes was on that record. He had joined Jimmy on, yeah, I'm going to say when we did Cheeseburger, that album, because we did two of Keith's songs.
Hmm.
Oh, I know when it was because I've talked to Keith. Keith, like in January of 1979, Jimmy asked him to come on the road. So Volcano was done in May of 79. And so we're doing the album. Um, we had done, I'm trying to think what's on there. Fins, maybe we had already recorded that. Uh, but we hit the song Volcano had not been written. So I was up at the volcano with my wife, who I just gotten married, and Keith and Jimmy come up to see the volcano. It's not doing anything. It's just, they're sitting. I think there's a picture of them sitting up there. Anyway, they come back down, and we left, and they came back down, and they came back and said, "I got a new song. Where are we going to go when the volcano blows?" So the next day
Wow.
we recorded that. And so I came up with the intro, da 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 da,
Wow.
and in the session, and because they just had the song, just the chords and the lyric they had, and so anyway we recorded it, and when it got to the solo, Jimmy says, "Mr. Utley," like in the Caribbean, and that stuck. And I don't. That's how it came about.
And so just off the cuff, that's crazy.
Everything Jimmy did was
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much
true.
off the cuff.
It wasn't that well thought through.
No, no, it was just an idea. Whop.
Yep. No, I think, the other thing I know with him, he really challenged me with ideas all the time because it was
Yeah,
always, can we do this? Can we do this? But the other thing was he was my advocate. And when he left, made me realize how important that is to be somebody's advocate. So that's one of the lessons I took. I want to honor him and also try to help other people by being their advocate. I think that's one of the things that, he was a cool cat.
Yeah,
You
he
know,
was.
he
He
was.
was. He was an advocate. That's that's why I was around for 50 years,
Mhm.
and just but and he was very loyal, to people. And when you as long and he as long as once in a while you agreed with him on some idea.
He,
uh, yeah. Wait a minute, you're walking away. What's wrong with that idea?
yeah.
Whoa. Anyway, I knew
So
you.
Tom,
I
how we
knew
doing?
you. Hey, I need to ask you something more serious.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
I'm looking at all these notes here.
No, I want to talk to you about AI.
Oh, AI.
Yeah,
How do you spell it?
AI.
AI.
Yeah. How's it affecting your business? Your bubble up.
You know, I mean, we're a bunch of technical nerds, and so we're adopting the heck out of it. We more than anything, we use it to help us nowadays write software and to make plans and to help us with marketing because we do marketing and all that kind of stuff. Um, I, I'm not I'm not a fan of using AI to make music, but I am a fan of using AI to make music make money. And I think there's going to be one of the things that we're doing right now is helping people just find stuff, how to organize their files and all that. With all of us, we have Jimmy was a great example of this. Where you got files all over the place, and if you got 7 or 10 people working on this stuff, then they're scattered all over the web. And we've developed some pretty cool tools to make it to where it will help you with your business. And so it's changing the business in that we're really focusing on helping people manage their business with it, not so much just building websites. We've been known for building websites and software. We'll still do that, but um, it's really helping us revolutionize how we work with clients, and particularly in the music business.
Right.
And although I gotta, it's a great tool. It's a good assistant, but the more you know about your trade, the better you'll be able to manage that tool to do the job you're looking for. And one of the things I was looking at the other day, I'm working with a company called Lodge Cast Iron. They make skillets and Dutch ovens and stuff, and I was working on some designs for merchandise that I've got an idea for, and one of the designs, it has a skillet, but it has two handles on it, and AI did that. So it's not perfect, but
It's, that works for me.
there are some tools out there, some things like Suno, um, that I think I'm not a big fan of, honestly. I think, the one thing I know, artists like you and people at your level, you can write an emotional song the best songs is the one you hear and you go, that's about me.
Right.
And Mac McAnally was good for that for me. Jimmy that's everybody. He
Right.
probably sold more sailboats than anybody. And so I don't think AI will ever get its heart broken. So I'm not too worried about it taking over writing good songs. But there are some tools out there that I don't think are great for musicians, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, didn't you submit a song? What was the name of that song? Smart. Let's see.
Oh, I just want to be smarter than a fish.
Yeah. You submitted to AI, like have a reggae version. Well, I
Yeah,
want
I
I
was.
want what's that guitar behind you?
I
What is
don't
it?
know that song well enough, Mike, but that guitar does work. It does
It
work.
does. Let me see that guitar.
This is a Jimmy Buffett. Oh, take this thing off.
Oh, what?
This is Jimmy Buffett special. He gave me this guitar.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, maybe just a little something would be nice.
I don't know if it works on the Zoom or not. I got chocolate on my fingers, icing on my lip, sugar diabetes, honey, and blubber on my hips. I keep a nightlight burning in the kitchen so I can go downstairs and cruise. I got them Oreo cream sandwich, chocolate covered cream filled cookie blue. Anyway,
See, Desert, you're a blues man.
absolutely.
I know that I completely know about that part of the country.
Yep. Well, play the bass for me, Mike.
Oh, you don't want to hear that. Thank God Charlie was so kind to me. I worked with him a little after that with the Bell Black combo. We played some shows. He never said anything about it.
He didn't call you
But,
back to play bass.
Charlie Rich on a flatbed truck for the Watermelon Festival in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which isn't really that far from us.
No, that had to be fun.
Yeah, it was fun. We ate Ford's hot dog. I mean, tamales. Ford's hot tamales. Ford, they were all through the South uh, after the Depression or during the Depression, and we sat there and backstage, Sammy and Claudia and Charlie and myself and Charlie's wife. I'm trying to think. Anyway,
So, where's the best barbecue in Arkansas?
Vols Bluff,
Yeah,
Craig's
Craig's
Barbecue.
Barbecue. Is that
It's
place
not
still
far
open?
from you.
Oh, shoot, no, we used to go to Craig's all the time. They also had coconut cream pies that were, whew.
I know. First time I went there was the Bill Black combo, and the pie shop and the barbecue place were connected. Then they had some sort of altercation. I don't know what happened. The pie shop moved across the street. Do you remember
Yeah,
what was across the street? And I
yep.
don't even think the pie shop's there anymore. But it's, listen, my wife, if we flew back from Memphis and went over to Duval's Bluff, picked up this barbecue is a little different. It's not brisket. It's made from a fresh ham, and then
Hmm.
we took the fresh ham. I mean the smoked ham, all the fixings, flew it back to Los Angeles and had a party. It was people they couldn't believe it.
Oh, yeah, they can't get that stuff in Los
No,
Angeles.
they cannot get that in L.A.
Wow. Well, Tom, we made it an hour. I'm shocked.
I could let it go another hour. This has been amazing.
I don't
Seriously,
know.
so many great little nuggets of wisdom. Coleman, you are the smartest guy.
No,
Yes, you are.
You,
no.
and both of you are so humble and so unpretentious. That's something I admire and respect about you and the entire Buffett organization. Um, Mike, I got to put you on the spot for a second. What's your favorite single Jimmy Buffett song to perform?
Oh, wow.
Whoa. One particular harbor was fun. That was, I mean, but that was just because of the up thing, the Caribbean part of it. But another Pirate Looks at 40 was great because um, there was room to move around a little bit, in the context of the song.
Yep. Coleman, what's your favorite Jimmy Buffett song?
Brahma Fear. That's easy.
Yeah.
Why?
Um, I've never thought of. I just like what it says. I'd like to ride the rodeo, but I got Brahma Fear, so I'll just stick to airplanes and gently pop my ears.
Yep.
It just that the lyrics,
Yeah.
are just, I mean, the two songs when I first heard Jimmy, it was the summer of '76. I'd finished my freshman year of school and I was living in Duval's Bluff because I didn't want to go back and be a mechanic after that. And Paul Betzner I'd never been around somebody that had a bunch of albums and clip speakers and a real stereo. And he was listening to Jimmy Buffett. And I first said, I'll never listen to that country shit. And then within a couple of days, all I was listening to was Jimmy Buffett. And the songs that got me were God's Own Drunk and Why Don't We Get Drunk and Screw. And those two songs hooked me, and then I learned the whole catalog.
You know, the first time I recorded with Jimmy, I never felt like he was country. Because he didn't fit in to what country was. He was more of a rock and roller, but
Mhm.
a lot of those people during that era in the early 70s, singer-songwriters that, they used country as, I mean, they used folk as a vehicle.
Right.
Yeah. And they would do country songs, but they never did them country.
Well,
I don't
John
think
Prine and Steve Goodman, that's what I started.
Exactly.
I went to those next, and Jimmy was good about introducing, those, different, Jesse Winchester,
Yeah, exactly.
all
as
that,
a
Mac McAnally,
Exactly. Mac, yes, exactly. It fits right in there. He's not country. Yeah,
no,
as a fan, I don't think you could really park Jimmy in any specific genre. He was just music.
right.
You know,
No,
it was awesome. All right, two quick questions, then we're going to go. What was the very first concert you guys ever remember attending as kids?
hmm.
mine.
Yeah, both of you.
Dave Clark 5, Memphis, Tennessee.
What year approximately?
Oh boy.
That's a good one,
Like
by the way.
63, 64.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coleman?
I think it was Grand Funk Railroad in '73 at Barton Coliseum in Little Rock.
Nice.
Another good
I
one.
never saw them live.
Oh man, yeah, that
Yeah,
was.
I bet it was good. I bet it, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was rocking, baby.
Uh,
I got
And
out of
what,
Desart for that one, Mike.
yeah.
what was the first record you ever bought with your own money?
Uh, you're not gonna believe this. I used to listen. I was always into ragtime piano. It was a guy named Big Tiny Little, and then a lady named Joanne Castle was on the Lawrence Welk show on PBS. And I bought a Joanne Castle album that she did Maple Leaf Rag, Scott Joplin, a lot of ragtime stuff, and it was great. And there was another guy named Johnny Maddox. I think he was out of Nashville, but he was it was ragtime piano.
Coleman?
I don't remember the album, but I remember joining the Columbia Record Club for 10 cents or something like that. And I got a bunch of albums, and so those were my first. And I think there was a Van Morrison one in there that I
Right.
latched onto. I
Well,
believe it's hard to remember, but I don't know. Back in those days, you joined the club and they chased you around trying to collect
Yeah.
the rest of the money after that.
sure they did. Well, gentlemen, I got to wrap it up. I just want to simply say thank you. Mike, thanks for all the music and all the memories.
Tom, thank you for having me.
Coleman, thank you for doing everything you did kind of behind the scenes to help Jimmy build that empire. He's one of the greatest music entrepreneurs of the last 100 years, for sure.
There were a
Um,
lot of people involved in that, and I'm glad to be part of it for
Me
sure.
well,
too.
I knew this was going to be a fantastic session, and the audience reaction just supports that notion. You guys killed it. I knew you would. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for inviting us. I mean, I don't know how you found me, but I knew where to find Mike.
Ah,
Hey, and by the way, Mike, I think we're influencers now.
influencers?
I,
No, no
yeah,
way.
I've
No.
seen people want us to do a podcast. We could do the new Bing and Bong.
Yeah,
That's
all right,
right.
let's do it.
I love
We
it.
call the hogs.
We can do that. Woo!
Woo.
Well, you guys take care.
Yeah.
All
See
right.
you around,
Okay. See
folks.
you,
See you,
Tom. Thank
Mike.
you.
Take care, Mike. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, Coleman. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.